everybody, today we're going to review how to diagram participles, and I'm going to teach you how to diagram gerunds. So we'll get started by a quick review. So we know participles are a verb form that is not used as a verb, so that's called a verbal. And participles are always used as an adjective to describe or modify a noun or pronoun, and they end in ing, ed, dt, or n. We know we have the present participle that ends in ing. Our past participles end in ed, and they're never, it's a verb form, but it's never the main action verb of the sentence. So the smiling child waved. We know smiling ends in ing and is describing the child. And the main verb of the sentence is waved. So we know we always identify our subject, our verb, and then anything else that's a verb form. If it's used as an adjective, it's a participle, right? If it's used as a different part of speech, that's a different type of verbal. The trotting horse slipped. Again, our subject is horse, our verb is slipped. Trotting describes the horse, therefore it's an adjective describing horse, but it's a verb form, so it's a special kind of adjective, it's a participle. We know sometimes we can have some irregular participles that end in trn, like this one, the burnt toast tasted terrible. We know burnt is a verb form, it's formed from the verb to burn, but it's not the main verb of the sentence. The main verb of the sentence, well, we first have to figure out the subject. Our subject is toast, our verb is tasted. Burnt is describing what kind of toast it was, therefore it's used as an adjective. Okay, now remember when we're diagramming participles, they're always going off of the noun or pronoun they modify on this curved line, right? So you always want to find out your subject, verb, complement, and then you look for what the other words are, whether they're prepositional phrases, whether they're modifiers like adjectives or adverbs, or whether they're participles. So we'll figure out if you see a word that's used as an adjective, but it's made from a verb, we know that's a participle. So you identify that word, and then you find the noun or pronoun that it modifies, and you draw a curved line, and you write the word that is the participle on that curved line connected to the noun or pronoun. Right? We know normal adjectives, you do on a slanted line that goes down and to the right. Right? But when you visually will show that it's different because it's a participle, it's a verb form, so it goes on that curved line. All right, so we know gerunds, you guys have studied this through videos and you've done a lot of this. We know a gerund is a verb form that also can end in ing, but the difference here is gerunds are always used as a noun. This means that it can be the subject of our sentence, the predicate nominative of our sentence, the direct object of our sentence, the indirect object of our sentence, or the object of the preposition of our sentence. So for example, again, it's a verb, it's formed from a verb. A gerund always ends in ing, but it's not the main verb of our sentence. So here, skiing down the slope was fun. I know my main verb is was, right? So there in my subject, what's this about? It's about skiing. So skiing ends in ing, it's formed from that verb to ski, but it is used here as a noun. It's the subject of the sentence. Let's take a look at this next example. Dad's favorite pastime is fishing for trout. So identify first, okay, my subject here it's about his pastime. My verb is, and specifically that's a linking verb. And what is his favorite pastime? Fishing. Fishing is ending in ing. It's formed from the verb to fish, but it's not the main verb of our sentence. Therefore, this is my predicate nominative that is also a gerund, right? And we know too that when we have our linking verb, we can tell something's our predicate nominative by saying, is this another way of saying what the subject is? Is fishing a pastime? Yes, so that works. We move to the next one where we have our direct object that's a gerund. We enjoyed hiking in the Santa Cruz Mountains. As always, you'll start by, okay, my subject, identify that, we. My verb is enjoyed, and that's an action verb. What did we enjoy? Hiking. Now it answers what and comes after an action verb, therefore this is my direct object, but this is a special kind of direct object. It's a gerund because it's formed from the verb to hike. It's not the main verb, but it's formed from your verb to hike. And then we know in the Santa Cruz Mountains is a prepositional phrase, showing some relation. Next one, indirect object. You should give sailing a try. So my subject, as always, we start with identifying our subject. Subject is you. Our verb is should give. That's an action verb, AV. What are you giving? Are you giving someone sailing? No, you're giving a try. So if it answers what and comes after an action verb, that's my direct object. And then to whom or to what are you giving that try? Okay, that's my indirect object. And the word that answers that question is sailing. So I'm going to say indirect object. The last place a gerund could be is in the object of the preposition. Please sweep the sidewalk after mowing. Okay, what's my subject here? This is the bossy sentence. Some of us maybe have parents who like to give us commands like this. My subject is understood you. My verb is sweep. It's an action verb. What are you sweeping? The sidewalk. This is my direct object. And then I see here, after mowing. I know after is a preposition, so this is a prepositional phrase. But look here, mowing is a special type of object of the preposition. It's a gerund because it ends in ing, and it's formed from the verb to mow. But here it's used as a noun. It's the object of the preposition. All right, so that's a quick review of gerunds, right? You want to make sure you don't confuse a gerund with a participle or as part of the verb phrase. If we look at our example, pausing, the deer was sniffing the wind before stepping into the meadow. Let's dissect this a little bit. What's my subject? This is about the deer. What was the deer doing? He was sniffing. Action verb, phrase. What was he sniffing? The wind. That's my direct object. Before stepping is a prepositional phrase. Into the meadow is another prepositional phrase. And then I have here pausing is an adjective describing deer, adjective, another adjective. Okay, so here we know pausing is a participle describing deer. It ends in ing, but it's being used as an adjective to describe which deer, the one that's pausing. Sniffing is a part of the verb phrase. Again, it ends in ing, but it's part of the main verb, so it's not going to be a verbal, it's going to be your main verb here. Stepping is a gerund used as the object of the preposition, right? You see it ends in ing and it follows that preposition. So notice here that all three of these words, pausing, sniffing, and stepping, end in ing, but they can be different things. So you really want to make sure you take your time to dissect the sentence to determine how the word is used, so that you don't just see ing and assume it's a gerund, right? It could be a participle, it could be part of a verb phrase, or it could be an object of a preposition that's a gerund. Okay, moving on to diagramming gerund. Diagramming gerunds. So, we know gerunds are diagrammed differently from other nouns because they're special nouns, they're verbals. For diagramming gerunds, the first step is you always start by figuring out subject, verb, complement. And then once you figure out that something is a gerund, you then place it in the sentence, in the spot in the sentence where that noun is being used. So if the gerund is your subject, you put it in the subject spot. If it's the direct object, you'll put it in the direct object spot, right? You determine what part of the sentence, what noun spot it's filling. And then you're going to draw the gerund in the correct spot. See example on the right. So here's an example of a gerund used as a subject, right? We do a caret like this, you go up, and then I always think of it like, kind of looks like the side angle of a sleigh, right? You do a little bit over, down, back over, and your gerund goes there, and then any complements or modifiers comes after it, and you'll notice the rest of the main sentence is on the normal subject-verb line, subject-verb complement line. Okay, that might be a little confusing, but just know those are the general steps. I'm going to go into some more specifics. So I'm going to draw some skeleton diagrams of how gerunds would be if they're in the different noun spots in the sentence. So, for example, they're diagrammed differently from other nouns. So we know if a gerund is the subject, it doesn't just go flat on the subject line. It's going to look different. So here's an example of a gerund as a subject. So if you had a gerund as a subject, you do your line, and then you do your gerund symbol like that, right? And then you do a line separating your subject from your verb. And I'm going to write on this line, gerund. So it was a little sloppy. Right, so gerund goes on this gerund structure that's elevated above, right? It doesn't just go flat on the normal subject line. It's visually shown using the structure to see that this is different than a normal subject because it's a verbal. What about a gerund? Let's do this one first. As an object of a preposition. Well, let's say we always know we'll have a subject and a verb, right? And let's say we have an adverb prepositional phrase, that's modifying this verb here. So we know the preposition always goes on the line. And in a normal prepositional phrase, you'd have a line straight across. That's where the object of the preposition would go. But we know, because it's a gerund, it's not diagrammed like a normal object of the preposition. So if you drew that line, erase it, right? Once we realize our object of the preposition is a gerund, you're going to use the same structure where it almost is like you're making a right angle and then another right angle, but you're doing it off the preposition here. So you do over, down, over. And then on this line, you'd write in the gerund. Okay? So if it's above the subject-verb line, it goes on this little caret. But if it's something that's below the subject-verb line, it just attaches to the other part of the diagram, like this when it's a prepositional phrase here. Okay, what about a gerund as a direct object or indirect object? So I'll do it like this sentence has both. We know we have a subject, and if we're having a direct object, I always know I'm going to have an action verb, AV, and then I know that I'll draw my perpendicular line to separate my verb from my object complement, which is my direct object. But this is going to look a little bit different. Just like the subject was elevated and on this caret, the direct object that's a gerund would be, you draw the caret, draw a little bit line up, and then you do that structure. Okay, that maybe is a little bit unclear. So I'm going to do it up here so I have more room. Right, I have my subject, my action verb, and then I have my direct object that is a gerund. Okay? Now, let's go back to this one. Say you could have a sentence with just a direct object, but we also know we could have a sentence that also has an indirect object. And we know normal indirect objects go below your subject-verb line, like this. But what's going to be different here is that you do that gerund structure like that. And we know this line should be parallel to this one here. Okay, the difference here is that a prepositional phrase goes on the slanted line, and an indirect object that's a gerund goes on this. It's straight down and then over. All right. The last one is that a gerund as a predicate nominative. So we know we will always have a subject. We will always have a linking verb if we're talking about predicate nominatives. And we know we do a slanted line in between our linking verb and our complement. And really, just like the direct object here, your predicate nominative, if it's a gerund, would go on a structure like this. Right? You do that gerund structure elevated on the caret. So I want you to notice that the parts of the sentence, if it's a noun, that's a gerund. And that noun is diagrammed above the subject-verb line or on that subject-verb line normally. That gerund is elevated. So for the direct object, it's elevated, right? Predicate nominative and subject, you do that same structure. If the gerund is in a noun spot that's usually below your subject-verb line, it's connected to either the preposition or the line that connects the indirect object, and it's just below. It's not, you don't use this caret with the line up. Okay? Now, make sure you have those down in your notes. Those are really important. What we're going to do now is we're going to do some practice diagramming. So here's some actual sentences, and we're going to use what we know, and you can reference back to the skeletons, but we're now putting in the regular words from the sentence in our diagrams. So for example, I enjoy swimming. My subject is I. Enjoy is my verb. What kind is it? It's an action verb. What do I enjoy? Swimming. So that I know that's my direct object. I see an ing word here that's not the main verb of my sentence. Therefore, this is a gerund. So I'm going to diagram it. I do my subject here, my verb, enjoy, my straight line that goes straight down and stops at the midway point to designate, okay, my direct object's going to go here. Now, it's not a normal direct object. It'd be wrong if I just wrote swimming on that line. It's a gerund. So I do my caret, line up, gerund structure, and I write swimming. And there you have it. Let's take a look at this sentence. Being slightly ill is no excuse for missing practice. Again, I'll start with my subject. What's my subject? This is all about being slightly ill. Being is a verb form, but it's not the main verb in my sentence, so I think that this is my subject here. What is it saying being slightly ill is? That's my main verb. It's my linking verb. So being slightly ill is what? It is no excuse. So excuse is my predicate nominative. No is an adverb. For missing practice is the prepositional phrase. And then slightly describes being. And ill is the direct object of this gerund. Now we talked about this with participles, that because they're verbals, they're like these hybrid words. This gerund is being used as a noun, but it has a direct object, ill. What are you being? Ill. So it's not the main direct object of this sentence because this is a linking verb sentence, but ill still is the direct object of this verbal, this hybrid verb form. So what that looks like is we do kind of our normal subject-verb diagram, right? That is going to look very similar. We know my gerund is my subject. And I do my gerund structure. And I write being. And I know my direct object of this goes right there, right off of the gerund line. Being ill. How ill are you? Well, I made a mistake here. Slightly describes how ill. It's an adverb. So it goes right here. All right, and then my main verb is. I do my slanted line. Excuse. No. What kind of excuse is it? It's one for practice and missing. Now missing, to miss is a verb, right? This is a participle. So it goes off the noun it modifies, which is practice, but on that slanted line. All right. Being slightly ill is no excuse for missing practice. Moving on to the next one. Taking that shortcut will cut several minutes off the trip. What's this about? It's about taking that shortcut. That's my subject, this whole thing, right? Taking is a verb form ending in ing, so I'm saying this is a gerund. And it's my subject. And I know shortcut is what you're taking. It's the direct object, and that's an adjective. So taking that shortcut is my subject. My verb is will cut. Those are action verbs. What is it going to cut? Minutes. If it answers what comes after an action verb, it's a direct object. Several is an adjective describing how many minutes. And then off the trip, I see a prepositional phrase. Okay, you know what to do. We do our we know the gerund here is being used as my subject. We know shortcut is the direct object of this gerund. That is describing shortcut. My verb phrase is will cut. My direct object is minutes. Several. Off the trip. And off the trip is telling me where those minutes will be cut. If it answers where, this is an adverb, prepositional phrase. So it goes off of the verb it's modifying. Off is the preposition. Trip is the object of the preposition. And the is an article or adjective describing that. Alrighty. Next one. That is my cat licking its paws. My subject here is that. What is my verb? It's is, which is a linking verb. That is what? Cat. Cat is the predicate nominative. My is an adjective describing cat. So we have our sentence base. We have the subject and verb and complement. So therefore, what is licking its paws? Well, licking ends in ing, but is it filling a noun spot? No. Right? Licking instead is describing what kind of cat. So this here is a participial phrase. Licking is the participle, and this is the direct object of that participle. Now this is going to be a review. We did this right before we, kind of one of the last grammar lessons we had at school, how to diagram a participial phrase like this. So we know that is my subject, is my linking verb, slanted line down to the right, you stop at the midline. Cat is the predicate nominative. My describes cat. And then a curved line going off of the noun that's being modified. Licking. And then what is it licking? Paws. Paws is your direct object of the participle. It's divided with that direct object line, and it goes on the flat part of your participle after your participle in your participial phrase diagram. It describes which paws? That is my cat licking its paws. So, again, just because it ends in ing, does that always mean it's a gerund? Nope. You need to make sure that you check, right, how it's used in the sentence. Okay, oops, on the back side here. Checking the time, Olivia rushed to the gym. All right, so my subject here is Olivia. This is about Olivia. Our verb is rushed. That's an action verb. Where did she rush? To the gym. Oops, it's a prepositional phrase, right? And then I see, okay, is there a complement? What did she rush? No. So this whole thing here, checking the time, is a different kind of phrase, right? It ends in ing. It's from a verb form, but it's not used in one of the noun spots. So it's describing Olivia. This is a participial phrase. We have the participle, checking, and the time is what she's checking. It's the direct object of the participle. So we diagram always our sentence base first, our subject verb. Olivia rushed. Where did she rush? To the gym. To gym. The. And as I mentioned before, checking the time is describing Olivia. So we know it's a participial phrase going underneath this noun. Checking. What is she checking? Time. And the describes time. So again, we're seeing through these diagrams the way that these words relate to each other. All right. With that, I think that's good for our practice today. What we're going to do is you guys are now going to move on to the diagramming worksheet, which looks like this. And this is your homework. And for this, what you'll need to do is you'll first underline the subject once, the verb twice, and the complement, if there is one, 3 times. Then you'll diagram the sentences completely. So you must include every word to receive full credit. Skiing down that slope was fun. This sentence might look familiar. We did a practice one that was a lot like this. Skiing is my subject. My verb is was, linking verb. So I'm going to underline my subject once, my linking verb twice, and if it's coming after a linking verb and it's an adjective, I know that this is my predicate adjective, also known as my complement. So I underline that 3 times. Down the slope is a prepositional phrase. So then I diagram that, and I know skiing is not just a normal subject. It ends in ing. It's formed from the verb to ski. Therefore, it's a gerund. So you draw your gerund diagram, and then you write skiing, and then down that slope is a prepositional phrase describing where you're skiing. Down, slope, that. And you want it to be going off of the gerund itself. The diagrams always show relation between the words that they modify. Words are always connected to the thing that they're modifying. So we know down the slope, that prepositional phrase is describing skiing, so it needs to be connected and right off underneath skiing. My verb is was, and I do that slanted line down to the right to do my predicate adjective, which is fun. Okay, next one. We watched the dolphins playing with the ball. My subject is we. Underline it once. Watched is my action verb. What did you watch? The dolphins. That's my complement. If it's answering who or what, coming after an action verb, I know it's a direct object. So what's playing with the ball here, right? That's a phrase. It's ending in ing, but it's not filling a noun spot. This is a participial phrase. And within it, you have a participle and then a prepositional phrase with the ball. So we'll diagram that. We know we goes in my subject spot. Watched goes in the verb spot. We do our straight line that stops at the midway point. Dolphins. The modifies dolphins. And I also know that playing with the ball describes the dolphins. They're the ones doing that action. Therefore, this participial phrase is describing dolphins. So playing and with the ball. Again, with the ball is modifying where they're playing or what they're playing. So it goes off of that participle. And I kind of made this line too long. It does not need to extend that long. But then we write our preposition with, object of the preposition ball, and the. All right, let's do one more. Please sweep the front sidewalk after mowing the lawn. So again, this is the command. And it's saying you, please sweep the front sidewalk after mowing the lawn. So my subject is understood you. My verb is sweep. It's an action verb. What are you sweeping? The front sidewalk. This is my direct object. And then I see after mowing the lawn, it's a prepositional phrase. This is an adjective. This is an adjective. And this is an adverb describing sweep. So I do my diagram. I do you. We know any imperative sentence, the subject's understood you. You put it in parentheses in the subject spot. My verb is sweep. How are you sweeping, please? What are you sweeping? It goes in the direct object spot, the sidewalk. The and front. Modify sidewalk because they're adjectives. But then I see this, after mowing the lawn. It's a prepositional phrase, but the word mowing is interesting because it ends in ing and it's formed from the verb to mow. Therefore, this is the preposition after, and this is the object of the preposition. It's also a gerund. And then what are you mowing the lawn? The lawn is the direct object of this gerund. So what does that look like? Well, after mowing the lawn is telling me when you're sweeping. So this preposition and gerund phrase is going to go below the verb, like a prepositional phrase, right? So we know after goes on your preposition line. And we know this is not a normal object of the preposition, so you do your gerund line here. Mowing goes right here. What are you mowing? Lawn. The. We know lawn is the direct object of the word mowing. So it looks like this. Use my